the lift is working. On to Moorgate Station. Moorgate Station. Welcome to TM's London Walks and History. Walk number 2, Series 1. Okay, we are here. Just come outside of Moorgate Station, turn right into Moorfields. That's from exit number 1. A Ropemaker Street. We're going to turn left and then right into Finsbury Street. Have a look at Artillery Ground. Turn right there to Finsbury Square. Have a look at Finsbury Square and then walk up City Road all the way to the Wesley Chapel and then cross over and left through Bunhill Fields. This is the British Red Cross building. Here we are at Ropemaker. If you look at the top, you can see the office buildings. There's 4 step levels. Each has their own roof garden, 4 roof gardens. And you see the building here. The window tilts and they're movable as the sunshine changes course, position, helping the cooling of the building. This office block won the Green Award back in 2009. Unfortunately, this temporary construction is blocking our view of the headquarters and drill ground of the Honourable Artillery Company. The oldest military body in the land, formed in 1537 under the title of the Guild or Fraternity of St. George. This does come under the City of London, despite us being in Finsbury, Islington. Vincenzo Lunardi, the secretary to the Ambassador of Naples, flew in his hot air balloon from these grounds in the first hot air balloon flight from English soil, covering 24 miles on the 15th of September 1784. Vincenzo Lunardi was watched by the Prince of Wales and more than 150,000 spectators as he went up with his cat, dog and caged pigeon for passengers. The balloonist even made an emergency landing at North Mims in Hertfordshire to let the cat out that had become flight sick before continuing. Today's walk is from Moorgate Station to the Holborn Viaduct. It says that Thomas and Walter Smith gave this water fountain in the name of their mother, Martha Smith. But no mention of their father. Who was their father? He was Tom Smith, and he was the inventor of the Christmas cracker. And Tom Smith crackers received their first royal warrant in 1909 and still make exclusive Christmas crackers for the royal family today. Not to be outdone by their brothers, the daughters of Martha Smith gave Islington Parish this cattle trough in the name of their mother, Martha Smith. The bowling green, in use during the summertime for office workers. The Ancient and Honourable Artillery Company of Boston, Massachusetts, the oldest corps in the United States, was founded in 1638 by emigrant members of the Honourable Artillery Company here. The home of Methodism. The foundation stone of the Wesley Chapel was laid by John Wesley himself at the age of 74 here on City Road on the 21st of April 1777. The chapel was opened for public worship on the 1st of November 1778. John Wesley lived in this house for the last 11 years of his life. Grade 1 listed, a rare example of a middle class 18th century London home. You can visit inside. And this is Bunhill or Bonehill Field Cemetery. Before becoming a burial ground for nonconformists in 1685, it literally was a hill of bones. Bones from the charnel houses of St Paul's Cathedral were dumped here. If you don't know what a charnel house is, it is a store where bones found in the ground by gravediggers digging new graves are put. So when you are walking through here, you are walking through the burial ground of hundreds of thousands of past people. 123,000 nonconformists were buried here in the 200 years it was in use. Just before given to the nonconformists to bury their dead, this site was given for plague victims in 1665. John Bunyan was in jail when he wrote his famous novel Pilgrim's Progress. At the beginning of the story, Bunyan writes, "As I walked through the wilderness of this world, I lighted on a certain place where was a den, and I laid me down in that place to sleep, and as I slept I dreamed a dream." The den he writes about would be a jail. The Daniel Defoe Monument, author of Robinson Crusoe. William Blake, gravestone number 1. William Blake, gravestone number 2. Reason being he has 2 gravestones is that the first one, over there, they didn't know where he was buried. But then someone discovered where he was buried, and so got the monument in the right place. William Blake wrote Jerusalem. I give you the end of a golden string, only wind it unto a ball. It will lead you in at heaven's gate, built in Jerusalem's wall. William Blake also wrote these lines. The angel that presided over my birth said, little creature, formed of joy and mirth, go love without the help of anything on earth. This darker section of road is made out of wood. George Fox, the founder of the Friends Society, the Quakers, is buried here unmarked. What a great idea. Local residents here, in researching the census of 1911, have dressed up as the people they have found in the census, living in their apartments here. The 17th century Pris Fotheringham. This is St. Luke's. I don't think the camera will pick it up, it's actually started to snow. Hope my camera doesn't freeze. If we look closely at the windowsill, under the window, you can actually see there's been movement in this building. See, it's not level. That one over there is straight, but this one's moved. The one above also moved. In the past, many households didn't have their own bath in their own home, so they would come to the ironmonger row baths here. Now that is brilliant street art. It's not painted, it's actually fabric, lines of fabric. Let's take a closer look. Can you see that? After making our way to Quaker Gardens, we walked through to Whitecross Street. We actually did a right, and then we went and looked at St Luke's Church and the Ironmonger Row Baths, did a U-turn, came back down Whitecross Street all the way down. It says you are here. We're going to cross over the road by Silk Street and we'll actually walk through the Barbican Centre. See the Barbican Centre, and we're going to see the church, St Giles Cripplegate. Then we're going to make our way Aldersgate Street, across a left here in Carthusian Street, and into Charterhouse Square, where we will see the Charterhouse Museum. So we're actually going to walk through Barbican Centre to the St Giles Cripplegate. I hope it's open at this time. Ah, it's open. A scale model of the Barbican Centre. St Giles Cripplegate stands unmoving in the middle of this huge modern housing estate called the Barbican. This church has been here for more than 1,000 years. I mean, it's been rebuilt and bombed and rebuilt again. But like Phoenix from the flames, the church is saying, I shall not be moved. This stone statue above the door of the main entrance is of St Giles. He was born to wealthy parents, but he gave all his wealth away and went to live as a hermit. The statue shows a young small animal, a hind, and the reason being the king of the area was out hunting with his arrows, and he went to kill the hind, the animal, with a bow and arrow, and St Giles stood in the way and put his hand in the way, and the arrow hit St. Giles went through his hand. The king was much impressed and they became good friends. St. Giles is the saint of the poor and the disabled. And in the statue you see that he is walking with a crutch. Just think, John Bunyan, Daniel Defoe, John Milton, William Shakespeare, Ben Jonson the fellow playwright, and Oliver Cromwell have all walked through these doors. John Bunyan, Oliver Cromwell, John Milton, Daniel Defoe. It's very heavy. Wow. A small chapel stood on the site of Charterhouse Square. "20 years later, in 1370, Mani founded a Carthusian monastery here. 8 monks moved in and the place became known as Charterhouse. By 1371, the first cells or homes for each individual monk, including their own private garden, were built. The monks had no personal possessions and were not allowed to eat meat. Each monk lived alone, except on Sundays when they walked and talked together, on walks lasting 3 hours outside of the monastery. In 1372, Manny died and was buried in the chapel before the high altar. So I take it that the chapel used to come here. Edward III and the royal children attended the funeral. By 1398, the monastery had 19 cells. In 1405, the Sunday walkabout had to be stopped because of the distraction of Bartholomew Fair. The dissolution of monasteries was started by Henry VIII seeking a divorce, and was carried out by his right-hand man of the time, Thomas Cromwell. Religious places were visited to see what its members were thinking and doing. Any excuse was used to seize valuables for the king, and properties were sold to rich buyers. An easy way for the king to receive revenue. Many of the Carthusians of Charterhouse remained loyal to Queen Catherine and spoke against the royal divorce. They were executed. The monastery was taken from the religious order and sold to 2 rich men. After the dissolution, the monastery became the property of Sir Edward North and the Duke of Norfolk. Both built residences for themselves. The change to religious life would have certainly had an effect on social life too. Henry VIII divorced his wife Catherine and married Anne Boleyn. Well, that didn't last long, did it? And what happened to Thomas Cromwell? Well, he got too big for his boots, ended up on Tower Hill, executed. In 1611, good old Thomas Sutton, a wealthy merchant, bought the property. This is good Thomas Sutton's burial place. Sutton paid for a hospital for 40 poor boys and 80 poor men. For the boys it became a school, and for the men a foundation was set up and still exists today, although the numbers of residents is much less. The gatehouse dates from the 16th century, as does the fine dining hall. Wesley and the novelist Thackeray are both former pupils of the school. One of the great smaller places to visit when you are on holiday mode in London, and I highly recommend the Brothers Tour. The 1504 St John's Priory Gateway, heavily restored now, houses a museum of the Order of St John, the forerunner of the St John's Ambulance Service. The original priory was burnt down during the Peasants' Revolt in 1381. Finsbury Savings Bank was opened on the 5th of August 1816. It had a modest beginning in a room in a house where a few people gathered together to form a savings bank for small tradesmen, labourers and servants. And the minimum amount that could be deposited at one time was a shilling. Despite its reputation as a small establishment for poor people, the Finsbury Savings Bank attracted some high-profile customers, including Charles Dickens. This is Clerkenwell Green with Sessions House, once the largest courthouse in England, now owned by the Freemasons. Mark's Memorial Library, formerly a schoolhouse. See the three balls, that's a sign of a pawnbroker, and it's here at a pub, the Castle in Farringdon. The reason being, this pub is both a pub and a pawnbroker. King Charles II was here. He didn't have any money to pay for his round, so he offered the owner his watch and he'd bring back the money to the next day. The owner of the pub said he can't do that, so Charles II wrote out a licence for the owner so he can be a pawnbroker, and true to his word, Charles II came back the next day, paid his bill and received his watch back. Charterhouse Square, where we looked at the Charterhouse. Then we have made our way to St John Street, where we looked at the Museum of the Order of St John. Then we looked at the Finsbury Bank of Savings. We've then made our way this way to Cowcross Street and to Smithfield, where we are now, Smithfield Meat Market. This is Smithfield Meat Market, and this is where my great-grandfather worked as a market porter, who I spoke about in my first video. In the Middle Ages, every Friday there was a horse fair here. Then came the trading of sheep, pigs and cattle. Look at that great ironwork and colour. The driving of cattle through the streets to Smithfield Market continued up until its temporary move to Islington in 1855. The meat market moved from here only for a short time before reopening here in 1868. The phrase, like a bull in a china shop, may have come from a bull being driven to Smithfield Market, ending up in a china shop. Charles Dickens wrote of the place in Oliver Twist when Bill Sikes drags Oliver through Smithfield. It was market morning. The ground was covered nearly ankle deep with filth and mire, and a thick steam perpetually rising from the reeking bodies of the cattle and mingling with the fog, which seemed to rest upon the chimney tops, hung heavily above. All the pens in the centre of the large area, and as many temporary ones as could be crowded into the vacant space, were filled with sheep, and tied up to posts by the gutter side were long lines of beasts and oxen, 3 or 4 deep. Countrymen, butchers, drovers, hawkers, boys, thieves, idlers, and vagabonds of every low grade were mingled together in a dense mass. The crowding, pushing, driving, beating, whooping and yelling, the unwashed, unshaven, squalid and dirty figures constantly running to and fro and bursting in and out of the throng rendered it a stunning, bewildering scene. So that was Oliver's experience. The Dickensian atmosphere has completely vanished. Except here in Clough Fair. A large fire in 1958 destroyed the entire poultry section, but in 1963, at a cost of £2 million, a new market hall was built. In the past, jousting tournaments were held here and was attended by the kings of England and France. The very lively and crowded Bartholomew Fair was held here from 1123 until its rowdiness and debauchery went too far and the authorities closed the fair for good in 1855. Wat Tyler, the famous leader of the Peasants' Revolt of 1381, came here to Smithfield to meet the young King Richard II to make a peace deal. Instead, Wat Tyler was killed after being stabbed by Woolworth, London's mayor. Wat Tyler was taken to the nearby hospital St Bartholomew's, but then dragged out and beheaded for everyone to see. Many of the executions were for religious reasons, and many of these public executions were of the most brutal of deaths imaginable. Another famous killing at Smithfield was of Sir William Wallace, the Scottish rebel. After being tried for treason at Westminster, he was dragged behind horses to here and executed barbarically. Excavation outside the doorway of St Bartholomew the Great in 1849 uncovered burnt stone and charred human bones. After we've had a look at St Bartholomew the Great Church and St Bartholomew's Hospital, we're going to make our way from Smithfield along Giltspur Street. When we get to the Old Bailey, we're going to turn right along the Holborn Viaduct and finish at the Holborn Viaduct. Right here, a favourite court jester of Henry I was on his holidays travelling to Rome when he fell very ill. In a feverish dream, he saw himself setting up a church and hospital. He prayed that if he survived his illness, he would do that he saw in the dream. On his return, with the permission of the king in the year 1123, Rahir established a priory and a hospital. The hospital is St Bartholomew's, known by Londoners as simply Bart's. Here is the only outdoor statue in London of Henry VIII, despite him being one of the most famous royals. Here, Henry VIII in familiar pose, above the gateway to Bart's, because in one of his very few good deeds, he saw that the hospital was left to continue caring for those in need and not affected by his own reformation. And Bart's is the oldest running hospital in London. And St Bartholomew the Great is the oldest running church in London. Medical science needed more bodies, and so body snatchers filled the demand for a high price. In this watch house, a watchman made sure that newly buried corpses here were not stolen away. This is said to be London's biggest church. Not cathedral, but church. The 12th century Crusaders started their journeys to the Holy Land here with a blessing and prayer. The famous Captain John Smith, who founded Jamestown, Virginia, in the Americas, is buried in the church. The Proms founder, Sir Henry Wood, has his ashes in the musicians' chapel inside the church. A tunnel was made under the road so the priest could walk from the church to the prison of Newgate, now where the Old Bailey stands, without having to push through the crowd of people gathering for the execution. The tunnel is now sealed off. A bellman rang a bell while the priest would say a prayer outside of the condemned cell. The bell can be seen today inside of the church. The words of the prayer are as follows: "All you that in the condemned hole do lie, prepare you, for tomorrow you shall die. Watch all and pray, the hour is drawing near, that you before the Almighty must appear." Examine well yourselves, in time repent, that you may not to eternal flames be sent. And when St. Sepulchre's bell in the morning tolls, the Lord have mercy on your souls. The Central Criminal Court, known by not just Londoners as the Old Bailey. Many of the great murder cases have been judged here. Built on the site of the old Newgate prison. The fountain marks the spot where the public hangings took place. Those who could afford paid to watch the hangings from in an upper floor window in the pub adjacent. This statue above the main entrance is the recording angel, with truth and fortitude on either side of her. Defend the children of the poor and punish the wrongdoer. A verse from Psalm 72 verse 1. Standing very high is the figure of justice. Unlike other statues which have her blindfolded, this one she is not blindfolded, so she can oversee justice being done. In her left hand she holds the scales of justice, and in her right hand she holds up high the sword of retribution. Dr. Crippen was tried, judged and hanged here in 1910. Timothy Evans was hanged in 1953 for the murders at number 10 Rillington Place. Ruth Ellis was the last woman hanged here in 1955 for shooting dead her lover. Now this is Holborn Viaduct, where this walk ends.